Hey guys, what's up? So, the lesson for today is dichotomy and dualism in geography. So, this is a part of the course on perspectives in human geography presented by the book Binger. Let us start with the definition of what dichotomy, dualism, and synthesis is. So, dichotomy refers to a situation where two opposing ideas that are radically different from each other cannot coexist within a system or within a discipline. For example, a discipline may have two radically opposite ideas which are not able to coexist in a discipline, and if they are present in the discipline they may break away and the discipline may get divided into two parts. Fine, so they are so opposing in nature. Then what is dualism? Dualism means the viewpoints are different. The two viewpoints within a particular system or a discipline are different, but they can coexist and bring about a healthy debate. Fine. And what is synthesis? Synthesis, it is a situation where different viewpoints coexist and they help in enriching and expansion of the discipline. So this is the target of any discipline. So for geography also, this is achieving synthesis has been the target of geographers, and they have been trying to achieve it since long through concepts such as unity of cosmos, which was given by Humboldt, unity in diversity given by Ritter. So several concepts, other concepts are also there. We'll see as we move forward, which have tried to synthesize the differing viewpoints. So why do dichotomy and dualism emerge? They emerge due to two ways of looking at the same phenomena, and several dichotomies exist within geography, and they may be related to the subject matter, and within the subject matter there is a dichotomy between physical geography and human geography. In the approach followed there is a dichotomy between general geography and special geography, and within the approaches within this regional geography or special geography there can be two parts, like two viewpoints. Either there can be an objective view or a subjective view. So objective view, you already know, I told you it's related to the concept of realism, and subjective views related to the concept of anti-realism. And within human geography, there can be two approaches: determinism or possibilism. And in methodology, within the human geography, there can be scientific methodology or nomothetic methodology, or ideographic methodology and philosophical methodology. So this is ideographic. P is there. Fine. Sorry for the typo. Then within the types of scientific approach, within I just told you that methodology can be scientific or philosophical. So within scientific there can be two ways: inductive or deductive. This we have discussed in the previous lectures. And also within the framework of study within geography, we can choose time as a framework and space as a framework. Fine. So geography is said to be a discipline of dichotomies. This is an important. A question can be asked like, explain why is geography a discipline of dichotomies. So you just explain this in point form and write two lines about every approach, and you are done. So let us start with determinism versus possibilism. I'll try to make you understand these particular concepts. So let us say we have this particular range, and within this range, on this end is determinism, and on this end is possibilism. Fine. So determinism can be said to be absence of free will. This is an extreme end of determinism. And possibilism can mean everything by free will. Everything by free will. Fine. So these are the two ends of this particular graph pictorial presentation. So as towards determinism, here we have theology. Fine. Here we have naturalism. Fine. Then we have this new or scientific environmental determinism of Ratzel. Here we have neo-determinism. So this can be considered to be a midpoint. And here we have probabilism. Then here we may have possibilism of Vidal. Then here cultural determinism of Carl Sawyer. Here economic determinism or indeterminism. Fine. One more is missing, I think. Yes, it is possibilism of Lucien Febvre. Febvre. So this particular chart will help you get an understanding of the concepts. So earlier there was theology. So theology means the God controls human activity. Fine. Then naturalism, nature controls human activity. Then environmental determinism, that is environment control human activity. Then neo-determinism is very close to the midpoint. That okay, environment controls, but humans also have a role to play in shaping their destiny. Then there is probabilism of OHK Spate. We'll deal about all these names and concepts in detail in the following slides. So it means that now we are moving from determinism to possibilism. I'm just trying to explain you that how we are moving from extreme form of determinism to possibilism. Like here, everything was being controlled by God. So here it is basically a hypothesis, not even a theory. So here environment is controlling. It is much more scientific. Okay, because we know environment controls our activities. And here we have neo-determinism. Then probabilism means that some events have more probability of occurrence than others. Then possibilism of Vidal. So we know that Vidal gave a balanced approach towards possibilism, that okay, there are possibilities, but the possibilities are not infinite, and nature also has a control. Then there is cultural determinism, culture determining human activity. Then possibilism of Lucien Febvre. This was an extreme form of possibilism. And then economic determinism or indeterminism. Like economy controls human activities, and this is extreme form of possibilism. You can also call this as voluntarism. So you can also call as voluntarism, extreme form of possibilism. Fine. So let us move forward. So what is determinism? It means absence of free will, and external factors determine human activities. So these external causes can be determined, and generalization can be made to frame laws and theories. This is the concept of determinism. So theology, I told you, that God controls human activities was prevalent during ancient medieval times. Then teleology is there, believe that God is a planner of the universe and men are performers on this grand stage created by God. Thus, nature has a God given purpose and it controls human activity. So, you should remember I told you in the previous lecture who was a teleologist. So, Ritter was a teleologist. Then there is naturalism, nature controlling human activity. For example, dry areas will lead to pastoralism, and settled agriculture can only happen in plain areas where there are rivers and water availability is there. Then, new or scientific environmental determinism. So, up till here, also, people, these three philosophies came under the broader head of environmental determinism. But it was not scientific, God is controlling, nature is controlling. So, Ratzel propounded this idea of new or scientific environmental determinism, and he propounded this idea in his book Anthropogeography 1. He emphasized on the role of environment as an agent that controls human activity. So, under the influence of theory of evolution given by Darwin and the Newtonian cause effect relationship, Ratzel said that humans were a result of evolution, like any other animal, and the natural laws that are applicable to other animals are also applicable to human. Like they are no special, they don't have any philosophical purpose and a very higher purpose to achieve in life. They are just like any other animal who have evolved. So he tried to he went a step further and he tried to explain the emergence of states or nation states from the perspective of evolution. In his work on political geography, he did this by equating state with an organism which needs to grow in its Lebensraum or living space. This is the German word Lebensraum. By feeding on other states through territorial expansion. So, what I am trying to say here is Ratzel said that even a state is a living organism. Suppose this is a state and these are other nation states that are surrounding it. Fine. So for this particular state to grow, it needs to do territorial expansion by feeding on the neighboring states. So you see, he's promoting colonialism, and this very idea of Ratzel, he was a German geographer, was used later by Adolf Hitler to justify his expansionist policies. Fine. So ontography, coming to ontography. Ontography is the study of how inorganic environment affects organic humans. So it's similar to environmental determinism. So this idea was given by given by I told you this in the previous lecture. This was given by none other than Davis. Then we have a very important scholar, a very important female scholar. She was a disciple of Ratzel, and her name is Ellen C. Semple. So she gave an extreme form of environmental determinism, and she said that environment affects human life in four ways. First one being the physiological controls of the environment. She said that environments affects race, for example, like mongoloids evolved in Gobi deserts, where dust storm lead to the development of epicanthic folds in eyes. You see the eyes of the mongoloids race, those people living in China, Japan, Mongolia, they have small eyes due to the development of epicanthic folds, and this was due to the dust storms that were prevalent there. And the dark skin of Negrito race prevalent in Africa is due to their evolution in the tropics. Another control that environment exerts is the psychological control. So Ellen C. Semple said that environment also affects culture. For example, she gave the example that Eskimos Eskimos culture, hell is dark and cold. Why? Because they live in polar areas where winters are cold and dark, and winters are tough. So they signify toughness and harsh terrain with darkness and coldness. That is hell for them. Also, she said that nirvana for Buddha is a state where physical activity ceases, since it is difficult to do physical work in the tropics. So most of us find this funny, but this is what she said, Then environment affects socio-economic development. She said that dry areas will lead to pastoralism, cool climate will lead to scientific development as seen in Western Europe, and less coal in Africa has led to less industrialization. So the socio-economic development is also being controlled by the environment. Environment also affects movement. For example, the presence of physical barriers like oceans and mountains restrict movement. Also, mountain passes may act as corridor facilitating development. So you can find that all these points are very relevant. They seem very relevant, even though they are extreme. So you can think that how what is the extremity in them. For example, there may be some areas where psychological controls may not be physiological controls may not be so much. Fine, so you need to think of examples like that, and there may be cases where environment may not be affecting movement. For example, in today's era of air travel, do you think that oceans and mountains are barriers? They are not barriers. So, and regarding this environment affecting socio-economic development, you can always say that Japan has a very tough terrain. Still, they are the most developed nation in the world. So, environment is not affecting them. So, many of these ideas of LNC simple, they are extreme, and they can be easily criticized. So, whenever a question comes on criticizing environmental determinism, you just take these 4 points and criticize each of them. For example, in psychological controls, you can criticize that nirvana was not a state where physical activity ceases. It was a state when a person achieves an higher wisdom. So, she's not correct in saying so. Fine. And today, these physiological controls are irrelevant because we have the evolution of mixed races. And also, there is new technologies like genetic babies, designer babies. So, environment is not controlling everything. Humans have taken a lot of control in their hands. So, that is the case. But however, I will also say that despite such radical views that LNC Semple had, she spoke that the culture may also influence human activity. Now, here she is saying that okay, environment is the supreme force, but culture is also affecting. How? She takes the example of Anglo-Saxons of Kentucky mountains who were forced to outmigrate from the mountains to the interior of the continent of North America. So, as the Europeans came, yeah, so this is the suppose this is the continent of America. Yeah. So suppose this is the continent of North America. Fine. So in North America, Anglo-Saxons used to stay here. So as the Europeans arrived and colonized America, they shifted to the interior of the peninsula, and still they preserved their culture. And LNC Semple says that this behavior is indistinguishable excellence. So what she is trying to say is, although the environment changed, still they were able to preserve their culture. So culture also has an effect. So in a answer on criticism on environmental determinism, this can be the conclusion. Fine. So I will say that till the first half of the 20th century, geographers used environmental determinism to justify the status of geography as a scientific discipline. So geographers always want to show that geography is a science, and they use environmental determinism to present this cause effect type of relationship, to present these particular theories and give a scientific picture of how environment is controlling and try to justify that geography is a science. And what happened after World War II? That is the second half of the 20th century. This environmental determinism or the scientific environmental determinism was challenged. And this led to the softening of stance, because why it was challenged? Due to several shortcomings I just told you in the previous slide. So this led to softening of stance through the development of neo-determinism by Anuchin and stop-and-go determinism by Griffith Taylor. So what is neo-determinism? It reflects a middle way between extreme form of determinism and possibilism. And according to it, man is not a free agent, but he can conquer nature by obeying it. That is, both internal and external factors play an important role in influencing human actions. So this is self-explanatory. And what is stop and go determinism? It's almost similar to neo-determinism. You can say it is a sub-part of the neo-determinism. So Griffith Taylor said that human beings can chart out their own course of action, but in the end, nature is supreme. So here he's giving the role of both internal and external again. But a little bit of difference is there. So Griffith Taylor says that he gives the example of traffic lights to explain his views. He says that humans are like traffic lights, trying to control the traffic flow on a road, which is similar to the path offered by nature for the humanity to develop. So the road is a path offered by the nature for the humanity to develop, and the humans are like traffic lights trying to control this particular flow, trying to alter the path. So traffic, he says that traffic lights can only alter traffic to some extent, but not for long. That is, they can only stop for some extent. Ultimately, go happens and the traffic flows. So he equates this to humans and environment and say that humans can control environmental factors, but only to some extent. And at the end, nature is supreme. So I hope you understood this. So, despite such softening of stance by environmental determinism, determinism was replaced by an extreme form of possibilism, that is indeterminism, or also known as economic determinism, in the 1950s during the quantitative revolution. So, what is this economic determinism? It is simple. It is based on the philosophy of positivism, and forget this. First, just simply understand that economic determinism means economy will determine human activity. Simple. So, it is based upon the philosophy of positivism and idea of an economic rational human being. According to it, economic needs guide human actions. That is, economic rational human being will always choose a path which leads to maximum profits. So, this is economic determinism. So, just understand that this may seem, I was saying that it is an extreme form of possibilism, and then I am saying that it is determinism. So there may be some confusion. So this is not a thing to get confused. It is simple. For example, if a question comes on determinism versus possibilism, then economic determinism, you must include it as a part of possibilism, because it is possibilism, and human being is choosing a path which is leading to maximum profits. And in the table, also I showed you that it is an this economic determinism is an is towards the side of possibilism. So it's an rather most extreme end of possibilism. Fine. So then why are we saying it determinism? The reason is simple. Like I told earlier, if a question is on determinism versus possibilism, you take a narrow definition of determinism and explain determinism only up using these philosophies. These philosophies. This is a narrow view. Fine. And explain possibilism using the philosophies on this side, this particular these philosophies. Fine. And then in the conclusion, you can write about this neo-determinism. However, if a question is on only determinism, like explain determinism, what do you understand by determinism in geography? Then you must try to understand that determinism means a control of external factors that guide human activity. So external factors can also include economy. So this is also a part of determinism. They can also include culture. So cultural determinism, even though it's on the side of possibilism, it is a part of determinism. In the broader definition, I am repeating that if a question is only about determinism, then economic determinism and cultural determinism are also a part of determinism, because here economy is determining human activity and here culture is determining human activity. So coming back to our slide, by late 1960s, such a concept of economic determinism or indeterminism came under severe criticism, not several, severe. Okay, so this is severe. Severe. criticism. Fine. And this led to the development of possibilistic themes like human geography. So you will understand it like in after quantitative revolution why it was criticized, and this criticism why it led to the development of new themes, and one of the themes was humanistic geography and it was based upon the possibilism. Fine. So now what is possibilism? It means that human controls his action through his own free will and human destiny lies in human hands. So this theme was developed by the French school. The most important scholar in possibilism is Vidal de la Blache. Like in determinism, you can say that in the traditional form of determinism, Ratzel was the most important scholar, and his contemporary Vidal in France propounded the idea of possibilism. So he said that environmental determinism is too rigid and used the explanation of Ratzel in anthropogeography too about cultural phenomena to give the concept of possibilism. So Ratzel, what he did in the volume 1 of anthropogeography, he propounded the idea of environment controlling human activities. But then in anthropogeography 2, he said that cultural phenomena also plays a role apart from environment. So this idea was further developed by Vidal, and he said that he gave the concept of possibilism. So, according to him, environment offers several possibilities, and human beings, based upon their culture, social and economic organization, capabilities, technological development, choose from the given possibilities. For example, solar energy, let us say, in the past was only used for natural heating and light, but it is now used to generate electricity. Why? Due to technological development. Coal earlier, for example, was a black rock, and just before industrial revolution, people realized the importance of coal to generate power, energy, etc. Fine. Then came the voluntarism of Lucien Febvre. So apart from voluntarism, you can also call this as extreme possibilism. Fine. Either this is voluntarism or I told you in the previous slide also, where I explained the graph between determinism and possibilism, that it was extreme possibilism of Lucien Febvre. So he was also a French philosopher, and he was a historian basically. So अब देखो ज्योग्राफी में बाहर के लोग आ गए हैं. So he was a historian trained to study phenomena in time rather than in space. Remember, Kant said that geography studies phenomena in space and history studies phenomena in time. So he gave an analogy. Just try to understand this. He said that humans earlier were hunters and gatherers. Then they became pastoralists. Then subsistence agriculture came. Then commercial agriculture came. Today there is hydroponics, aquaponics. Tomorrow there may be something else, vertical farming and whatnot. So he said that the ultimate control is in the hand of humans and not nature. Nature is not governing us. Our own free will is governing us. So he said that there are no necessities but everywhere possibilities, quote unquote. So this was a statement given by him. So this particular philosophy led to the development of economic determinism later. Economic determinism, we just talked about it in the previous slide, and economic determinism obviously will promote economic activity, industrialization, and further led to environmental degradation. So this is the criticism of, you can say, possibilism. Another philosophy was probabilism of O.H.K. Spate. So he gave importance to the significance of chance apart from human endeavor and said that some phenomena have greater probability of occurrence than others. So he's giving importance to chance and human endeavor both. Then cultural determinism of Carl Sawyer. Carl Sawyer was working in the Berkeley School, and his idea is similar to the idea of Otto Schluter that we have discussed earlier. So what he said that there is a natural landscape, that is a natural region. For example, natural region can be a drainage basin, and it offers some possibilities. Then humans start occupying that area, and over a period of time, humans through their culture and through their technological know-how, through their social organization, they keep changing and developing that natural landscape. And finally, what we get is a cultural landscape. For example, a simple natural river basin may be converted to a area of land where we have some industries, some settlements, houses, airports, fine roadways, waterways. So this is a cultural landscape and this is a natural landscape. So this idea is similar, if you remember correctly, to Otto Schluter, who said that there is Erlandschaft can equate natural landscape with Erlandschaft, and with culture over a period of time it converts to cultural landschaft. So this is a similar concept given by Carl Sawyer. And economic determinism philosophy was given by Schaeffer. We'll explain it later when we study about the quantitative revolution. And then there was humanism. So you can see that these particular economic determinism and cultural determinism are actually a part of probabilism. I showed you in the graph also. But in the broader definition of determinism, they can also be included. So another part of possibilism is humanism. The contemporary usage of possibilism has been done by humanists. They said that human values are, but in humanism, human values are overemphasized, leading to the neglect of environment. So humanism came after 1972 when quantitative revolution declined, and in this human values were overemphasized and environment was neglected. So the best, that is the middle path, is neo-determinism or stop and go determinism, or even probabilism is also close to the midpoint. You can see the graph and now you will understand this whole concept and you will be able to answer any question related to determinism and possibilism. And for criticism, just use these points and see how you can criticize them. Now coming to dichotomy and dualism between physical and human geography. So physical geography is concerned with the study of environment and its variables. Humans are treated as just another species and environmental laws are applicable to them, that are applicable to other species are also applicable to them. And we use the scienticism, nomothetic or law-making approach and realism in physical geography more because the subject matter of physical geography is static, so it is easier to use scientific methods. And in what do you study in human geography? Humans are given a special status while studying the human environmental relationship. So this study of human environmental relationship is the goal of geography. I have also explained it to you previously that this can be the basic definition of geography. Geography is the study of human environment relationship. Physical geography is concerned with the study of environment and its variables, and human geography in human geography, humans are given a special status, and it is based upon the philosophy of metaphysical human. So, what is metaphysical human? It says that humans have a higher mental capacity, can think, and have their own value system, which is a result of their life experiences. So, seems very correct. The way we think, no other animal or creature is able to think the way human beings have been able to think. So, the subject matter of human geography may seem highly variable because every person can think in his own way. Every person is different. So it is said that it is better to use philosophical methods unlike the scientific methods used in physical geography since its subject matter is static. So how did the dichotomy and dualism develop? Let us get to that. So first is the pre-quantitative revolution phase. So it was an era of dualism between physical and human geography. You should now remember clearly what dualism means, what dichotomy means, and what synthesis means. So I'm saying era of dualism. Fine. Why? Because in ancient and medieval period, you can see that focus was on physical geography. But some geographers like Strabo, Herodotus, Albiruni, they also focused on human aspects. In the classical period, Varenius gave more importance to physical geography. Or he said that general geography is important. But he also said that human geography serves as a footnote to physical geography. So he's giving importance to both. Then in the pre-modern period, Humboldt and Ritter organized both physical and human aspects as part of geography. In the modern period, there was areal differentiation, and both physical and human geography were studied as a part of areal differentiation. So, we'll get to what areal differentiation is in the next lesson. Then came the quantitative revolution phase. So, I am saying that it is an era of synthesis between physical and human geography. Why? Attempts were made to bridge the gap between the two branches by adopting logical positivism and economic determinism. Just try to understand that physical geography is already adopting scientific methods and human geography is adopting philosophical methods. So in during the QR, even human geography started to adopt this scientific methods, and there was model making and law making. So using logical positivism and the idea of economic rational human being and economic determinism, so even human geography is trying to develop laws. So the gap between physical geography and human geography has been bridged. So it was showed that human geography can also be scientific. Perry and Shorley, the two important geographers in United Kingdom, developed a general systems theory, and it was applicable to both physical and human geography. So when we study about the systems analysis, we'll explain what general system theory is. Then came the post QR phase, that is after 1972. It was an era of dichotomy. Why dichotomy? Because humanism became popular and used approaches like existentialism and phenomenology. And human geography was started to focus on individual aspects. So human geography at this particular time was dominated by three approaches. Fine. So what were those three approaches? Just let me mention them. I'll explain them in the later lessons. So human geography at this particular time was based upon humanism, behavioralism, and there were other approaches like radicalism, welfare approach, and environmentalism, and these were a part of the, just a minute, I'm forgetting, these were a part of the, yes, social relevance movement after late 1960s. Late. So human geography, you can see that it has started to focus on individual aspects. And now the era of economic determinism and logical positivism is over. This particular thing is now over. So thus human geography became very subjective. Earlier it was tried to make it scientific, but now it has again become subjective. And physical geography continued to use scientific methods like geology and everything. As the sciences developed in the latter half of the 20th century, physical geography also developed. So this was leading to a divergence between the two branches of geography, and it was felt that physical geography would merge with sister disciplines like geomorphology would merge with geology, climatology would merge with meteorology, and there will be a split between the two branches. That is, due to the physical geography merging with sister disciplines in environmental sciences, there will be a split between human geography and physical geography. Fine. It was seen that there may be a split, but what happened? A split in geography was avoided due to the emergence of applied aspects like town planning, watershed development, disaster management. So these applied aspects came into being, and where both physical and human geography were required. You can see that in town planning, you need physical know about the physical aspects of the town and also the human aspects, the demography, population, culture, religion, language. Then in watershed development, disaster management, you need to know about both the physical and human aspects. So emergence of these aspects avoided the split. And finally, the growth of environmentalism as a paradigm in geography after late 1990s has helped to bring together the two branches of geography, since the study of both humans and environment and their interrelationship with each other is necessary to tackle the problems of today like climate change. I hope you understood this whole topic, and it was quite simple provided it is explained in a good fashion. So dichotomy and dualism, our next topic, between general and special geography. What is general geography? It is concerned with the study with the development of science of geography through the creation of universal laws and theories by studying common aspects across regions. So it is self-explanatory. What is special geography? Its objective is to find the uniqueness inherent in a region which helps to differentiate a region from other regions or other areas. So how did the dichotomy and dualism develop between these two particular branches? Before 20th century, there was dualism between general and special geography. This could be seen in the works of Humboldt and Ritter. They said unity of cosmos, unity in diversity, and then Ratzel Vidal. So, what was the idea behind these particular people? They said that both are a part of the same cosmos. Humboldt said that general and special geography are both important. You need to understand the laws of general geography, and then you must use those laws in special geography. Then, in the first half of the 20th century, so you must be knowing that this was dominated by special geography and the regional approach and aerial differentiation. So, first half of the 20th century, all these approaches were there, and the general geography was neglected. This was seen in the works of Hettner and Otto Schluter, who emphasized on chorology. So, chorology is the science of regions. So, now we are focusing more on regions and less on general aspects. Then, Vidalian regional approach. Then, Hartshorne, aerial differentiation. Then, Carl Sawyer, cultural determinism. That is how culture determines humans' activity in a region. So, again, we are focusing on the region. So, this was time was dominated by special geography. Then came quantitative revolution. It was dominated by general geography, because it was an era of making laws, and you can't make laws for every region, so you have to study general geography. So special geography at this time was very low due to the development of universal models and theories. However, traces of regional geography or special geography, you can just wrote it here by mistake, although they may mean the same thing or not. They usually they mean the same thing. So for the purpose of UPSC, you can consider them as same. But when the question is on general and special, don't use the word regional. Use the word special. Special. So traces of special geography were seen in the works of Whittlesey. He gave the idea of compage. And when did he give this idea? He gave this particular idea in 1953. Why did he give this idea? What was the idea? This we will be dealing in the next lessons. And after 1972, what happened? There was a synthesis between general and special geography due to the rise of new regional approach, fine, which was seen in the development of applied aspects like planning regions. So both general and special geography were used together in the new regional approach. We will study about this also in the next lessons. So guys, that is it for today. Like, share, subscribe and comment to spread the word about this novel initiative. Thank you.